This is Nailing the Apex. I'm Tim Hauraney. What a qualifying at the Bahrain Grand Prix. Oscar Piastri captures pole with a 1:29.841. That's McLaren's first ever pole in Bahrain. So we're going to go through that. We'll talk about George Russell, what Toto Wolff had to say, because I heard from him following qualifying. Also heard from Piastri, heard from Russell, heard from Lando Norris, heard from Charles Leclerc. We'll run you through some Ferrari news as Luca Di Montezemolo was a little bit critical of the team to Sky Italia following qualifying. And we'll run you through some of the grid and what is shaken out so far, because we still haven't heard back yet, or I still haven't heard back yet from the FIA on what's going to happen with the two Mercedes drivers. And we'll get into that in a few minutes. But first, I want to start and talk about Piastri. This driver just keeps getting stronger and stronger, and I felt he could have won in Japan. You know, I've said that on this podcast before. I felt he could have won in Japan if he nailed his pole lap, if he nailed his final Q3 push lap. I believe if he had have gotten pole there, he would have walked away with a victory. I felt he could have won in Australia as well if McLaren had allowed him to pass Lando Norris during the wet portions of that race. And today in Bahrain, grabs pole position with a mega lap. I mean, the car for him has been in a really good place all weekend long. He's looked extremely comfortable. It was a really solid lap that he had turned out at the end in Q3 on that final push lap. I think if he can just stay out in the lead off the start, if he can keep advantage of the clean air, because tomorrow I think that is going to play a huge difference. The clean air, I think, is going to be massive in tomorrow's race. So if he can maintain those advantages, I can see him coming away with the win. But I think for him, that victory would just allow him to get his season started, because I feel like, he's got so much potential that he's been looking to unleash for the first three races of this season. And I think tomorrow is that. I think that could be a turning point in this championship, because we're going to talk about Lando Norris here in a few minutes and what I think's kind of going on there. But for Oscar, pretty downbeat at the end of qualifying. Really didn't hype anything up too much. Was happy with the lap. Thought he could have done a couple things a little bit differently, a little bit better. But outside of that, felt that he extracted, for the most part, the performance from the car. Where George Russell, in the Mercedes, very impressive. I've been talking a lot about Mercedes this season, and I even said after Bahrain testing that I felt that, Mercedes was going to play a factor in this championship. And I also said that George Russell was going to play a factor in this championship. And for George, he wasn't really feeling confidence with the car in Q1 and again in Q2. He was surprised to be a 10th off of pole position, but he had started to feel a bit more comfortable once he got into Q3. And he had said that he started to feel that confidence within himself and started to believe more within the car, which is a really, it's an interesting dynamic, because, usually as a driver, it's if you're struggling with the confidence in Q1 and Q2, in any type of qualifying, it's really hard to kind of get it back for Q3 or the final phase of qualifying, because sometimes you're just searching for it and it just doesn't really appear. But for George, he was able to extract the performance from himself and from the car as well. This weekend, Mercedes wasn't expecting to be on the front row, so this isn't a track that they felt that they were going to do quite well at. They thought that they were going to, really be fighting for the top five, not start on the front row. So the race tomorrow for them may be a bit of a challenge with tire overheating. But let's see. I mean, I think there's probably going to be a lot of management from George off the start. He may stick his nose in on Oscar to see if he can kind of get that lead. But if he can't, I could see George really just trying to manage the tire and turn this thing into a two-stopper, and probably the last stint he'll push more and see where he's at. Toto Wolff was happy to see them do well in that session. George's performance was really better than what the whole team had expected, including Toto. They needed to understand following this session, why the car was so good, and then try and figure out how to replicate that later on in the season, because this was a session that was actually quite hot. So track temp was quite high. And last year, Mercedes actually didn't perform well at all when track temp was really high. They really struggled. In the cooler conditions, though, Mercedes was quite strong. And so they've had a big role reversal with this current car that they have. So they've definitely got a lot of searching throughout the data to figure out how they were able to, I guess, be this quick in tough conditions, and how can they replicate it, extract it, and make it better moving forward. Because, when we get to Miami, that's going to be a really hot race as well. And there's going to be others on the calendar, especially, Saudi Arabia, coming up next weekend. That could be a really hot one at the same time. So good learnings for that team moving forward. As for Charles Leclerc, P3 with a lap time of 1:30.175, really solid job from Charles Leclerc here in qualifying. I mean, Ferrari brought a new floor to their car, and I had said in our podcast on Thursday when I taped it with Adam, from some of the folks who I'd spoken with, Ferrari I thought was going to be really interesting to see how they did here, because I felt that this was going to be a sort of a hinge point within their season. I know it's early, but it would have been a point of inflection to take a look at what they have and what they could have moving forward, and to see what Charles Leclerc did, really playing with the setup a lot. Looked like he might have been running a lot of front wing. I'd have to go back and take a closer look at that, but it looks like he's running something different than what Lewis is running in terms of setup, not in terms of components on the car. I believe they have the exact same components on both car. I just think that Charles is able to squeeze a little bit more out of it because of the setup that he's taking advantage of. But Leclerc said that, the floor really helped him this weekend, a new floor, but he thinks that it's going to help them more when they get to Saudi Arabia next weekend. So Saudi Arabia being a pretty fast circuit, a lot of fast corners, a lot of change of direction, a lot of medium speed, high speed corners. And he felt that that's probably where the floor is really going to help them. But he still felt that he did get a little bit more out of it because of the new floor that they had brought. And so that was the floor they'd fast tracked to this car. Said Ferrari had put in a lot of work to really bring this car around, and setup-wise, said they have gone in a interesting direction and that the car is starting to feel better. So new floor, obviously doing some things, setup and new floor equals the performance that we're seeing now. So I don't think there was much left in the car, and I think he extracted everything that was in there. And Charles is a really good qualifier as well, but he didn't believe that he was going to be this close to pole position. Felt that the race may be a bit of a challenge as well, because McLaren has been really good at controlling tire temperatures or tire overheating within race stints. So Leclerc feels he won't be close to the McLarens or the McLaren, depending on what happens with Lando Norris, but he thinks they can compete against George Russell. So we'll see where George shakes out in the race, because Charles feels that the Ferrari can keep pace and do battle with the Mercedes tomorrow, which is great for us to sit at home and watch that kind of a fight. P4, Kimi Antonelli. I mean, what a great performance from Kimi Antonelli. Really impressive. Great stuff from him. Toto said with a smile following this one, quote, he sniffed pole for the first flying lap he maybe pushed it a bit too much, but recovered for the second one. So Toto obviously being, super thrilled, like the rest of the team, to see what Kimi Antonelli's been able to do and how far he's come. I mean, he's been pushing George Russell a lot this weekend. As for Mercedes leaving the garage too early before the resumption time to qualifying, so that's under investigation. So both Mercedes drivers under investigation. So it's a new rule in that sense, and the team they're going to have to see what the stewards say. But at the time of recording this, no penalty has been issued. I believe it's going to be a fine for the team, but let's just wait and see when the full ruling comes out. Pierre Gasly, really great stuff from Pierre. From what I've been told, the Alpine in the corners is like on rails, like as fast as the McLarens and the high speed stuff, and also the medium speed stuff. I'm trying to think of what types of corners that could replicate in Bahrain on that track. I would say probably like turn 11, maybe turn 6. Those corners could be, they would be, I would say, medium to high speed. So for Alpine, I mean, that's incredible. I mean, they have an engine deficit. There's no question about that. With the Renault, they've been complaining about that now for a few seasons. So you swap out that engine with something else, and who knows where they end up. Maybe that's like front row stuff we're talking. So Alpine looks like in certain conditions, certain tracks, they're going to be really competitive. P6 for Lando Norris. Just a pretty disappointing run for him. He lost time in Sector 1 on his final push lap in Q3. Had a lot of wheel spin at the exit of turn 2, the exit curbing. That looks like it costed him probably over a tenth of a second, I would say. He said following this one that he has been slow this whole weekend, and he wasn't too surprised about that, but said, quote, "I feel like I've never driven a Formula One car before." Following that, he went on to say that trying to get on the podium will be his goal, but he felt that Oscar was going to lap everyone on Sunday. So I don't know about Oscar lapping everyone on Sunday. I mean, I'm sure Oscar is going to be very strong. But he's essentially not looking at battling for race victory, not unless something wild happens off of the start. If he's going to be stuck in a lot of dirty air, I would say P2 if he's lucky, P3 if he's lucky, depending on how he plays out the race and what he does. Max Verstappen, P7. Just a horrible weekend for Max so far. Just struggling with the brake feel, stopping power. He said it was very difficult for him to find the grip. So he feels the tire grip that they're getting out of the car is very low at the moment. And they've gone in a lot of different directions with setup on the car, and they still just can't seem to find anything that gets the car into the balance and allows him to do what he needs to do with his driving style to get the performance from the car. P8, Carlos Sainz, he had put together some really good laps out there today. It looks like he's really learning how to work the tools in the car. And by tools, I mean like the differential, the B-bell settings. So brake bias, brake migration settings, things of that nature, learning what the car needs for tire prep on the out laps as well. And that's all starting to sort of come together for him. He's an extremely hard worker, so it doesn't really surprise me that he's caught up on so many different things. Now, it may change a bit as he goes from track to track, but he is starting to, you can see it, put it together, and the driving style to come along with it. That's muscle memory. That will take some time. But, I mean, Carlos is a really, really hard worker, and so all of his hard work is starting to bear some fruit here. So let's see what happens as he moves along. The race should be interesting for him. I think he can score some good points. I think he can score some really good points on Sunday. So let's see what happens with him and the Williams. As for Lewis Hamilton, he was pretty apologetic over the radio to the team on his cool down lap at the end of this one. He was upset afterwards with, what he had said as was his poor performance. So, I mean, you don't often hear that stuff from Lewis. So I look at this as maybe he could go in a different direction with setup. We'll see what happens, how that plays out over the next few races. I can see him starting to maybe start to emulate what Charles is doing with setup, but let's wait and see how that one shakes out. Quickly on Ferrari, Sky Italia had an interview with former chair of Ferrari, Luca de Montezemolo, and he was saying that the Scuderia is a team that lacks leadership, and that's what they had said over Sky Sports. And that he was happy with Leclerc qualifying P3, but him saying the lack of leadership of the Scuderia, I think this has got to do with losing Enrico Cardile to Aston Martin last summer. And Cardile was the head of Ferrari's aero development until Aston Martin swooped in and poached him from the Scuderia to become their chief technical officer to work under Adrian Newey. I mean, Enrico Cardile is a really true talent, and for Aston to get him, it's a big get. He doesn't start working at the team until I believe it's July because he's still on gardening leave, so there's not much that he can do with Aston Martin. But I think also when we circle back to those comments from Luca, I think it also has to do with how long it took to announce Enrico Cardile's replacement. So Loke Serra, who in October joined the team as their chassis technical director. So I think that's what he's kind of referring to, because I feel like Vasseur has done a really incredible job with this team and keeping them calm, keeping them confident as well. I think also it's taken some experimentation from Charles Leclerc to unlock what the potential of this car is. It does seem like something that they may be able to build upon for this season, which means that they could turn this thing around for themselves and start battling with the McLarens in a few races' time. And I think that when you look at the replacement Loke Serra, I mean, the guy's got a lot of he's definitely got a lot of experience. I'm sure Fred knows what he's doing when it comes to that in terms of recruiting and putting these aerodynamicists in the positions of power that they are in. But I think losing Cardile was a big hit, maybe to the start of this car. And I think Cardile had done such a great job with last year's car when they finally got things turned around. That was a part of Cardile's, was the car that was his, right? So, and it was a very competitive car when they really unlocked the performance from it. So yeah, I think losing him was a huge thing. And I think that's what Luca de Montezemolo is referring to. P10, Yuki Tsunoda, really good qualifying from him. He was happy with it considering how challenging the car has been for themselves all weekend long. But that's a good result from him. He's trying you can see that he's trying lots of different things with the car to get himself, get the car into a good balance window where he can get some more confidence in the car to go out and push it. So he's done quite well here this weekend. Really, really impressed with how Yuki's done, and it kind of looks like he's really learning and bringing this thing forward. So I'm excited to see how his race goes on Sunday, and we can judge a little bit better how overall his weekend went. Q2 out at the end of that one was Jack Doohan, Isaac Hadjar, Nico Hulkenberg, Fernando Alonso, Esteban Ocon. Jack Doohan, that's best qualifying for him, P11 so far in F1. Just missed out on getting into Q3, but really positive stuff for him. Oliver Oakes at the end of this one, he was really happy about it, and so that's the most important thing, to make sure that your team principal, your team boss is happy with your performance. He was, so that's good. Isaac Hadjar, not the greatest of showings from Isaac. I mean, he's been really strong all season he was strong in FP1, FP2. It kind of just looks like things really did get away from them in qualifying. Though, as for Nico Hülkenberg, had his lap time deleted in Q2, but we didn't get that information until Q3, so that upset the Williams folks for sure. It's because Alex Albon, I guess technically would have been put through to Q2, but Hülkenberg, he now drops to P16, and that moves Alex forward. Fernando Alonso doing a really good job with a very difficult car to drive. Looking at where things started in the weekend for him with his steering wheel coming off, I mean, really good stuff from Fernando here this weekend. As for Esteban Ocon, had a huge crash in Q2. I'm sure you saw it. It was massive. The whole rear end of that car is absolutely destroyed. I wouldn't be surprised if that's a new gearbox drivetrain. We'll see what happens with the engine as well. I'll get more on that tomorrow a few hours before the race. So if you want to see how much was replaced on Esteban's car, I should have a report on that on my social media a few hours before a race starts. But for Esteban, maybe a little too aggressive on that. I believe it was his out lap. Getting out of turn 2, getting the power down, and then basically high-siding the car. It's what I call it, high-siding. It's when you go over the rumble strips, but the rumble strips can be really high. For him, literally lifting the car up, and then once it comes back down, it causes this huge tank slapper because you have so much torque going through the rear tires. Esteban just not able to catch it, but glad to see he's okay because that actually was a really big impact going backwards. So a lot of work for the crew to do there, but he does feel that points are on the table for tomorrow. Q1 out at the end, Alex Albon, Liam Lawson, Gabriel Bortoleto, Lance Stroll, Ollie Behrman. Albon had been really quick all weekend long. The team didn't really understand where the performance had gone, but it sounds like on his pit out on that final Q1 run, he had lost a lot of temperature in the tire before he started his final push lap. So trying to dodge other cars and overtake other cars on the out lap, he did have some of the stronger race pace, I think. So even though he had the issues in qualifying, I still think some points could be on the board for Alex tomorrow as well, because like I just said there, his race pace was pretty strong in Friday free practice 2. So I think he can make up some places there. Liam Lawson had a problem with DRS. He said it was a good run up until the point with the DRS malfunction that he had. So he had wheel spin out of the corner, and then he hit the DRS button. It opened, but then all of a sudden closed again on him. So he feels that the car has been quite quick for him, was just putting it all together in qualifying. He felt the speed was there, but thinks he can move forward for the race tomorrow. It's good to hear that from Liam. I know a lot of the Red Bull folks were worried about his confidence because of being together with Max in the difficult car. So good to see Liam starting to sort of beginning to sort of rebound from what was a difficult few races being in the Red Bull racing machine. As for Lance, so the car had a few setup issues with it that I learned, and the team hadn't ironed them out earlier. They hadn't ironed these issues out before starting qualifying. So one of the main issues was the ride height levels on his car, which I'm actually quite surprised that the team didn't catch that. So ride height levels. So the car, in conjunction with how high it is from the ground, we've talked about ride height on the show before. The closer you can kind of get the car to the pavement, the quicker you're going to go, the more downforce you're going to get. But you can't get too low because there's rules about that. And then also at the same time, you can't get it too low where you're wearing away the plank, i.e. what happened to Lewis Hamilton in China, and he got disqualified for that. So yeah, so I think he may have to start from Lance may have to start from pit lane tomorrow. I think we'll see. I haven't been given given any info on that, but it does seem like that would be the right thing to do. Reset the ride height, get things better. So if you're doing that, you're going to have to break Parc Fermé. So we'll see. But Mike Crack did say following qualifying, quote, "We got things completely wrong with Lance's car today. The ride height setup was incorrect, which created high levels of understeer and costed him significant lap time and a chance to qualify higher up the grid. Fernando put in a solid performance on a set of used softs and will start from P13, but we need to learn and reflect on this session and come back stronger tomorrow." Ollie Behrman, last. That's actually shocking considering how strong this young driver has been. He said it was a messy lap and had been struggling with front locking. Said they'd been trying to sort it out all weekend, but he felt good in free practice 2 on Friday, despite all of the issues that he had been suffering, but he felt like he didn't have the confidence in the car to extract the lap time needed to advance. So it could be a long day on Sunday for Ollie Behrman. I wanted to update you on the engine meeting that took place on Friday. So if you don't follow me on social media, I posted about the information I'd gotten from the FIA in regards to V10 engines and the engine meeting that took place on Friday in Bahrain. We talked about it on Thursday's podcast, and people may be glazing over about engine talk, but it's really important for Formula One. It is. It's very, very important. It's important from the fact of where is the sport going, right? Where are we now, and where are we going in the future? And this engine meeting was so important that the list of representatives that were in this meeting are massive. CEO of Audi, Gerhard Dahlner was there. CEO of Sauber Holding was there. Frederick Vasseur was there. The global director of Ford Performance, Mark Royce, president of General Motors, Russell Bleens, Koji Watanabe, president of Honda. Who else did we have in here? I'm just going through. Ollie Kalanis, chairman of the board of management and CEO of Mercedes-Benz. Toto Wolff was there. Who else was there? Christian Horner was also there. Matteo Bonotto was there. Chief Operating Officer, Chief Technical Officer of Stake F1. That's Mattia's designation now. Him even showing up and being there. I mean, just an incredible list of names that were in this meeting. And so got some breaking news here on the show. So George Russell has just been handed a 1-place grid drop. Okay, I can now confirm officially that George Russell and Kimi Antonelli have been handed 1-place grid drop, grid penalty. So that moves George Russell down to P3, promotes Charles Leclerc to P2, while Kimi Antonelli drops to P5, and Pierre Gasly moves all the way up to P4. So that worked out great for Pierre. Now, that was some breaking news we just come across the show. So that's how it all works. Okay. I'm going to dive in a little bit deeper here with the engine conversation that I'd been talking about. So in the opening of the meeting, so the FIA president, Mohammed Ben Soleim, who was at this race this weekend. It's the first one that he's attended this weekend. He wanted to stress that the purpose of the gathering or the meeting in general was to look at cost-effective solutions to safeguard the long-term sustainability of Formula One. So little tweaks and adjustments are still being constructively discussed with all stakeholders in terms of the 2026 power unit regulations. Now, a range of options and timelines for the future with power units was discussed. And one of the topics that was under discussion was the adoption of normally aspirated engines with running sustainable fuels. Now, Adam and I had spoken about V10s. So V10s back in the day, when I was racing in a lot of the F1 undercards, even with when I was all the way up to Formula Renault in the undercards for Formula One, they were running V10 engines. Those engines were awesome, but maybe a little unrealistic to think that we were ever going to go back to that. I think a lot of the engine manufacturers are more interested to have an engine that does have some form of electrification. And so this was the discussion that revolves around that. It wasn't a discussion of saying like, hey, this is what we're going to be, we're doing. It's more along the lines of a discussion of like, where are we going with these engines, these engine regulations? So FIA getting all the stakeholders together in F1, including F1 as well. And here are the discussion parameters and what they centered on. So reducing costs of research and development of F1 powertrains. Currently, the F1 powertrain that's being run right now is expensive. It's turning out to be quite expensive. So that's something that they're going to want to have to take a look at as they move things forward. So building resilience against fluctuations of the global economy, like Adam and I had discussed on Thursday in our show, reducing the complexity of Formula One power units. So right now the power units right now are they are quite complex. Okay, they're having to retool an internal combustion engine. They can't use the internal combustion engines that they run right now, even though they are V6 twin turbo engines. You can't run them right now. They have to be redesigned because you're pumping more battery power through it in different ways. So with kinetic energy, not using the MGU-H, which is the motor generator unit. That was motor generator unit heat. That's a big thing that's gone from these engines for next season. Very expensive component too. Considerations on sustainability, weight reduction in relation to safety, performance, road car relevance, sound, and audience appeal. These are all things that were discussed. So all parties at the end of this thing had said that they are committed to the 2026 power unit regulations and look forward to the prospect of exciting racing. So all parties agreed to continue discussions, however, on the future of the technical direction of the sport. So what direction are they going to be going in when it comes to these power units? A lot of them shared a lot of interest with a level of electrification. They feel that should be a part of anything that they discuss moving forward into the future. I tend to agree with them. Hybrids are, like I've always talked about, will become a big part of our future, and they should be. They're a very sophisticated form of technology that, I feel that hybrids are going to play a big part for us, and so will sustainable fuels, which also was a big talking point at the same time. Some of the rumors I've been hearing, some of the teams having trouble with some of the synthetic fuels that they've been using, some of the biofuels other teams are using, some are getting more performance, some are getting less. Now, again, that's just paddock rumors, so not quite sure who that is affecting and which teams. I could guess, but I don't want to. But also, considerations will be given to adjustments on financial regulations relating to power units as part of a broader cost reduction. And then also policing of the regulations also is going to be a priority for them moving forward. So it's really interesting. We had talked, Adam and I, on Thursday about, what could, if there are teams that are struggling, which there is going to be with a new set of regulations, especially engine regulations, power unit regulations, there is always going to be teams that are going to drag behind him. If you take a look at 2014, when the first turbo hybrids came into play, Mercedes had a massive advantage, huge. They were gone into the sunset every single race weekend up until 2017, when Ferrari started to pull them back and figuring their stuff out. And then Honda finally got their stuff together and they came out strong as well eventually, but it took them a really long time. So the issue is that where Formula One is now, we have great racing. The fields are tight. We are talking right now about tenths of a second. We don't necessarily want it to get back to, it being 4 or 5 second deficits from, first place all the way back to 20th. So what does that mean? Some of the things I've heard, and again, paddock rumors, but clipping on the straights. So what does that mean, clipping on the straights? So when a driver is going flat out down a straightaway during a quali lap, the engine and the harvesting, it stops. So there is no more battery power coming, and you have to try and harvest energy. So clipping is kind of what it's called when you sort of run out of the juice. Lifting off on the straightaways, using the engine to try and get more energy into the battery so you can unleash it a little bit later in the lap, has been one of the issues that it sounds like some of the sim drivers are experiencing with this regulation. So is there something in here where they start discussing, okay, we are going to run, and I'm just throwing this out here, we are going to run 70% internal combustion engine power with the output of the battery being 30%. At the moment, what they're pushing for is a 50-50 split. 50% of the power comes from the internal combustion engine. The other 50% of the power comes from the electrification, the battery. And so is there going to be some wiggle room in there? Can teams start talking, negotiating about, okay, how do we, if there is someone struggling, how do you get them back up to speed? Is that something that they will discuss? I have a feeling that they will. Is that a direction that they'll go in? I'm not quite sure at this moment. But another thing I find interesting, something that I also heard, again, paddock rumors, is the possibility of maybe a token system. So if someone's falling behind in making their engine competitive, but they know how to do it, and so without the regulation being set on how much money you can spend building your engine, maybe you get cost tokens where you can go back into your engine and rebuild certain things or make certain components better throughout the season because you've fallen behind on that performance scale. So interesting conversations. It is a lot of a regulation. There's a lot changing. And so it's a massive overhaul. And so there are going to be teething issues. But yeah, just some of the things that I've been hearing as this weekend has been playing out, and obviously from last weekend as well. So I hope you enjoyed that, folks. We will be back. Adam and I will be back Monday morning for another episode of Nailing the Apex, where we will go over the Bahrain Grand Prix.